Most of us wanted to start business at some point, but there will be lot of fears to start that, pertaining to investment, pertaining to safety. What if something goes wrong? What will happen to my career? Let's understand this perspective from someone who has seen both sides of the coin. I would like to introduce Mr. Shukrit, who worked in corporate for close to 15 years and then started his company Sayer Therapeutics Private Limited in 2015 and is currently one of the fastest growing healthcare companies in India. Let's hear his journey from corporate to startup. Hi Shukrit.
Hi Bharat, how are you?
Good. Glad to see you in my podcast and thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
As I always tell you, you're always my inspiration. And if I remember, in the last assignment of your career before Sayer Therapeutics as head of branded formulations, you were handling a team of 1600 plus people and a P&L of close to 400 to 500 crore. And we still used to discuss during that time, the market was growing at 10%, but the top 10 brands were growing at a rate of 30%. And I know you played a pivotal role in bringing these brands to that level. So let's hear your corporate journey, how it started. And you also have the experience in not only in India, but also in US and other countries.
Right.
So let's hear your story, how you started, how you continued.
Right. So, I think I've had the fortune of working in a big US multinational for about 7 years in the US. And then we decided to come back to India and came straight into Bangalore and was working here with an Indian MNC, big biotech. The US experience was very interesting because that was my first job. So very foundational. We had, I started out in market research and business intelligence, and I was terrified in the first few months to even speak in a meeting because it would seem that I'm speaking out of turn or I don't know what I'm doing. So all I did was kept my head down, was like a sponge, was imbibing whatever was being said, whatever was being done, and also thinking to myself, well, would I be able to contribute someday to this? And then in a few months' time, I found myself adding value. Worked with a lot of senior corporate leaders in the US across medical, clinical, of course, commercial, regulatory, legal. So that was a good foundational basis.
Right.
And then from market research, moved into global marketing, where I was given the charge of leading some indications, medicines for the Asian markets. So focusing on Japan, China, Southeast Asia, even India to an extent, based out of the global region. So very thankful for that experience. But it was a good foundational basis. And I don't remember me having more than one direct report at that time that was working for me or with me. Fast forward to coming back to India. Started out as a general manager in the strategy division, looking to out-license molecules. And was able to do that in a very short period of time, at which point the company started wondering, okay, what next? What do we, have him handle? But over a period of 7 years, as you put it, we built the oncology business in India, which was the second fastest growing business in the country at that time. We were able to work with the biosimilars collaboration on myelin, and then basically, as you mentioned, a 500 crore P&L. But what's most interesting is I went from 0 reports at Biocon to 19 reports direct as a team, and that 19 went up to 110 and 110 went up to 1600, and 1600 was probably 1/5 of the organization at that time. So, the learning curve in terms of how to manage teams and how to manage people was a trial by fire. You had to learn on the job. It wasn't something someone was going to tell you, from HR with a manual saying, okay, 10 people, this is what you do, 100 people, this is what you do. Ultimately, you lead everything with common sense and logic.
Right.
And beyond that, then it comes down to being fair to the system and to the people. And if you do that, then they will respond and react to you. So managing those 1,600 people, but largely, ensuring that we keep growing the business was very interesting. So foundational experience, 7 years at a US company, and then a wide resource working with an Indian company. I've been very fortunate to have that experience.
Great to hear that, Shukrit. I think in coming to the startup, I think when you started in 2015, Sayer Therapeutics Private Limited,
Yeah.
there will be day in, day out challenges
Yeah.
in terms of handling vendors, customers,
Yes.
team members, pricing, whatnot. How did your corporate experience help in facing some of these challenges in a startup?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, we work with patients, right? Patients are at the center of everything we do. So quality, regulatory, safety, and ethics are paramount. And I think those cultural values got imbibed very well working in the US. And then when you come to India, you are working in the trenches, operations, daily chaos, but you're going up the value chain in terms of general management. You're managing a bigger team.
Right.
So you've got a sound business basis, you've got a sound scientific experience, and then you've sort of gone up the value chain in terms of general management and managing a big strategic business unit with a lot of employees. And there are challenges on a daily basis. There are firefights. There's a customer that's a problem. There's an internal customer. There's an external customer that's a problem. So, how do you manage the finances? How do you turn profitable for the company, for the business? How do you keep the high performers happy? How do you ensure that the low performers or the laggards are given the right feedback so they come up to the level that is expected? So all of these things build you up as a business leader, and these are not things that you consciously pick up. These are things that you pick up on the job on a daily basis, and all of those sum total of parts sort of adds to your experience as a leader, and that leader can then go forward and run a startup.
Right.
Having said that, no matter how many experiences you have, I had 7 years in the US, 7 years in Bangalore before starting Sayer Therapeutics, but nothing prepares you for a startup. You have to go through it to understand it. But yes, those experiences over the last 15 years in the two companies have helped me drive Sayer forward, which now is 10 years old.
Great. Congratulations on that, Shukrit.
Thank you.
And you worked in both the setups. I think a corporate setup, some of the leading multinationals where the structured processes, where multiple teams handling multiple tasks.
Right.
And in a startup where the process is not as firm as compared to a corporate companies and one person taking care of multiple tasks.
Right.
What are the pros and cons of working in a corporate versus a startup?
See, I think the pros of working in a corporate, you have, you work with companies that have deep pockets. There's a lot of financial resources available. So money is never a problem. Budgets are never a problem. You have an escalation mechanism. If something goes wrong, there is someone else you can go to, because ultimately you are not the CEO, you are one of the functional leaders or a functional team members. So there is an escalation mechanism. You get to interact in a corporate with a lot of functional leaders, senior leaders with experience. So you can pick up a lot there, knowingly and unknowingly. Their systems, processes, SOPs are well set. So all you have to do is follow that and you will be compliant and on the right side of the company and the law. The cons from a corporate standpoint, one of them being, if you get too comfortable in a particular role, let's say marketing or market research or business development, then you become a gun for hire.
Right.
a mercenary. What I mean by that is, then your next job, you move to some other company with a handsome increment, but you are doing the same role in a better designation, and then that's all you do for the rest of your life. So you are sort of stuck as a business functional leader for the rest of your life. You don't get an overall general management expertise. That is what some people do. The other thing is, within the same company, you tend to get pigeonholed. There are silos functionally, so you will never be exposed to the other parts of the business. You will have to focus where you need to focus. So that's the cons from a corporate standpoint. From a startup, I think you've identified a pain point. You've identified an unmet need, and you're saying, this is what I want to build on. This is what my business model is. So it gives you a lot of gratification when some of those things work for you. Not all things will work all the times. If everyone was a unicorn, then it's a different story. So it gives you a lot of gratification. From the pros standpoint, just that purpose to wake up every morning and feel that you're contributing to this pain point, unmet need, is a huge upside. The the satisfaction of staffing with team members, seniors, folks who were juniors with you but have now gone into senior roles within the company and are driving it on their own without a push, gives you a lot of satisfaction to see people develop into leaders. The cons from a startup, as well as I do, you run this Megamp as well, right? Whenever things are good and on an autopilot, no one's coming to you.
Yeah.
You will only get challenges come to your desk. You will only get challenges. They will knock on your door and say, here's a problem. We need to solve this. There are constant curveballs. There's always chaos. There's always some high performer trying to leave, and then you have to either, convince them or backfill with someone who can come in and pick up the threads. Capital is a big concern, right? I mean, it is ROI driven. It is not a given that there are unlimited resources. So that becomes a challenge for people as well, right? So the cons are, you need to focus on managing with those optimal sense of resources. Build the right team, and if you don't have the right team, then that could be a big challenge. So, there's pros and cons to both, but luckily, thankfully, have been through that experience on both sides, so no complaints.
Sure. And we are now living in a world of startups where the country encourages people to start something, run the businesses, etc. But the recent statistics says, Shukrit, there is only 5% of the companies passing from second year to third year and going into break even and going into the success phase. I always feel there has to be something taught which is not told in colleges or schools about business, how to run the businesses, etc. There are some basic lessons or basic advice that is required before starting something. Say, I think two-pronged thing. Someone who just passed out from the college wanted to start something. They don't have any clarity of the environment of startups and business. Two, someone is working in a corporate and wanted to do something.
Yeah.
I feel something has to be taught, or some basic checkpoints has to be ticked out before starting something. What do you think some of the basic things they have to evaluate before entering into a business?
The corporate guys or freshers?
I think both.
Yeah. So I think from corporate, let's start with corporate first, right? They have to, learn to leave the safety net behind, and that's what someone like I had to do when I moved from corporate into a startup. When I say safety net, I mean, big paychecks, consistent salaries, predictable growth. So that safety net is something that they need to sort of, understand that they have to leave it behind. Secondly, one of the challenges I always find with corporate execs is they all tend to work in a box. what they've learned they want to implement. But here what you have to do is you have to unpack, unlearn, and then be curious and learn new things. You have to understand your ecosystem. Just because you're a big corporate guy doesn't mean you can use the same network that you had built. You have to build a new network with founders, with co-founders, with regulatory people, so that you understand how you can succeed. It's I think the biggest challenge is folks not wanting to work out of the box.
Right.
That really becomes a challenge. And the perfection. I mean, everyone would want every project to be perfect, but it's about speed and accountability.
Right.
Great is the enemy of the good. You don't focus on great. You focus on good, you focus on speed, execution, and you take things forward. So I think from a corporate standpoint, that's what you need to do. Again, as I mentioned earlier, capital is a constraint, that's a given. It's, don't expect that there are resources. If you need money, you have to provide an ROI, and that is not something that corporate guys who move into startups understand very well. And that becomes a challenge. And then just generally, I think the ability to have an unnatural absence of ego.
Right.
I used to be a senior VP. Now I can't be talking to a vendor. No, today there is something broken in the bathroom. Unfortunately, tomorrow there is a vendor call that you need to do and you need to fix something. There's some inventory challenges. If you know business, if you understand business, you have to be multitasking. You can't be in a silo. If you want to be in a silo, it's not going to work very well for you. So
Right.
That's what happens from a corporate standpoint in terms of what they need to do. From freshers, from starters, I think first you need to understand, do you really have a business plan? Meaning, do you really have a pain point that you are looking to solve?
Right.
Is the purpose good? Okay, if it's good, don't fall in love with it. Validate it.
Right.
You need to go to customers. You need to ask them whether this idea is going to fly. You need to pilot it. For startups, I think, you've for your business model, you need to know what is a true pain point, what is a true unmet need. And typically, founders fall in love with their ideas, but you need to validate it.
Yep.
You need to go out there and talk to customers and understand if this is going to fly. Once that is done, you need to understand the regulatory system. Because, I read this, and this is true. One of the startups recently went under because they were not getting a regulatory license or clearance for some staircases that had to be built for some cold chain storage products.
Okay.
And they were waiting forever for that approval to come in, and they ran out of cash. So, I mean, these are blind sides from a regulatory standpoint. You need to be able to liaison and work with stakeholders from the government, from the municipal bodies and what have you. You asked earlier, right? What are some things that need to be taught? I think financial proficiency should be taught. Capital management should be taught, because one of the earliest things is cash flow, right? You make revenues, great. You have profits, super. But cash flow is a reality. What comes in, what goes out. And those are fundamentals. If you don't learn early enough and start focusing on early enough, you will be in a spot of trouble, in a spot of bother. And this is what we learned from example, from going through the whole process. So, startup, freshers who come in, when they do startups, they need to focus on capital. Right. They need to focus on validating the product or the business idea. More importantly, the first 4 or 5 hires, they need to really add value. So you need to really be clear on who you're hiring, because they need to run around like, their life and the company's life depended on it.
Right.
And that's true for co-founders too. It's not just, coming in, swinging away and trying to do something on a daily basis. No, you have to work like your life depends on it. So finding the right team, empowering them, making them accountable, and giving them the right culture fit is something that is also very important. So I think founders who are freshers, and you see a lot of that in the tech world today, could do a lot of these things to make their lives better. And most importantly, stick to the mission, stick to the purpose, focus on the whys, and why I'm trying to do this, and it will get you through your rough days.
Sure.
So
as you said, Shukrit, they have to validate the idea. They have to check with the initial set of customers, see the traction, whether the idea is picking up or not.
Right.
How did you select this particular business idea, Sayer Therapeutics, focusing on oncology?
Yeah.
What's your process of validating this particular business idea?
Yeah, good question. We, in the job that I held in Bangalore, we saw that a lot of products that we were in licensing, bringing in from US, European, Japanese companies, were from the smaller biotechs. The the big ones such as Glaxos or the Novartises, they have their global pipelines,
Right.
and they have their Indian setups. So the pipeline is seamless in terms of products coming in. But there are a lot of small to mid-sized biotechs and pharma companies that are based in the US, in Europe, that really have very good medicines for life-threatening diseases. But these medicines never come to this part of the world for a lot of reasons. The regulatory landscape is a little bit of a black hole. How do we get the product approved? If we get the product approved, who do we work with? Because we don't have our own team, so who can we entrust our product with? That will not just help with the scientific platform and messaging and positioning, but will also help from a regulatory and compliance standpoint. So that's where we came in. We said, look, we've worked globally. We've also dug in the trenches operationally in India and built business lines. So we will provide you a nice marriage of those kind of skill sets, and you can be rest assured that your product is going to be, in safe hands with us. So that's how we started reaching out to small to mid-sized biotechs. And in fact, the business that we built in the earlier company was on one or two of these in-license assets. So that gave us an idea that if we could get out and build a portfolio of in-license assets, it could really unlock value. So that was the idea. Of course, went out to customers before we started it, validated it in terms of the product, in terms of the idea. In fact, the idea first and the product second, or the medicines.
Sorry for interrupting. So have you validated that before starting the company, or you have started the company and started validating?
No,
the
we
product?
actually validated that before we started the company.
Okay.
About 6 months before we got registered as a company, we went out and spoke to a lot of customers. Not a lot, I think a few who were well-wishers and have some good business experience along with their clinical experience, and that's how we were able to validate it. And then we knew that if the products are good and they are in a monopoly or a duopoly kind of a situation in the market, then there will be a traction.
Right.
And that's really what we saw. So today we have about 15 companies tied up, 1 or 2 assets each, and a lot of them work in a space where we can actually add value to the doctor's practice.
Great. I think extension to that question is on the VC funding. So now we are living in the world of venture capitalists, which is a fascinating word now. And I was reading one statistic where out of 100 companies pitch to VCs, maybe 1 or 2 companies gets funded.
Sure.
And I think I remember Sayer Therapeutics was one of the companies in the initial stage at the seed funding level itself. They were able to raise close to 9.5 million, if I am not wrong.
Yeah.
How did you manage that? How did you convince the investors to bind to this particular idea, and how did you take it to that level, Shukrit?
No, I think what VCs or at some level private equity or angel investors will look for is the credibility of the team.
Right.
And that's an unsaid thing. They don't say it as much, but I think it matters. And I agree, as a business leader, I think if I sit across someone who pitches me an idea, I would see if the person is credible.
Right.
And how do you build the credibility is based on your history, your track record, and your performance. So when they saw that, we had run big business lines up to the tune of 500 crores, we had in-licensed a few products, and they had grown to a significant size in the market in the earlier job, not at Sayer.
Right.
And then, clearly identifying a pain point, which is a lot of medicines for rare diseases, orphan medicines, niche medicines are not available in this part of the world. that pain point was a very intuitive one. So when we made a business plan, business presentation to them, of course it happened quickly, but it still took 37 versions of the slide deck. But it happened quickly, yes, as compared to a lot of other players. And I think it largely boils down to the credibility of the team pitching and what their chemistry is and what their dynamics are. And then the business idea also has to be simple, at the same time intuitive, and something that the investors can buy in.
Sure. I think this is a perspective from established corporate company, someone from corporate companies
Right.
starting a startup.
Right.
I think if you take an example of someone starting fresh, straight from college,
Yes.
and wanted to start something and wanted to pitch to VCs,
Yes.
what should they do to get VC funded, Shukrit?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent their credibility matters in terms of where they've been and where they've studied and what their pedigree is, right? I mean, you see a lot of tier 1 engineering colleges get tech funding.
Right.
But in addition to that, you need to be Excel ninjas. You need to have got the market research done. You need to have understood what are the analogs in the market that have got to a certain market share. Use that as examples. Create business models. But most importantly, be able to tell the story.
Yeah.
In a very concise, precise manner. If you're not able to explain the story, I don't think you understand well enough what you're doing.
Right.
So from a startup standpoint, I think given the successes in the tech world, for VCs, it's sort of a low risk play. And again, at the end of the day, I think I'm not a VC expert, but out of every 10 investments, they expect maybe, 1 or 2 to do moderately okay, 1 to break out and be a unicorn, and maybe the other 5, 6 will sort of die off.
Right.
So it's sort of anyways a game of probability and a mix of choices. So that could be one way to see how they assess it. But from a startup standpoint, from freshers, you need to do your market research. You need to have your business models. You need to have analogs built in, and then most importantly, you need to be able to tell your story convincingly.
Right.
Ultimately, it will be a mix of your credibility, your academic credentials, if you are a fresher, the team that is working with you, how they are complementary in bringing in either some financial discipline or some regulatory discipline or some tech prowess. Because everyone being just a tech prowess person might also not work. So that's how I think they might be assessing it, VCs, but can't really get into their head to know more.
Sure. Once they get funded, I think there are 2 models of business we are seeing today, Shukrit.
Yeah.
One, you got funded, you burned the money to attract customers, maybe loss making in the first year, second year, then they go into break even phase and they become profitable after 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Scenario 2, not funded by VCs, they wanted to be profitable from day one, but the sales top line is less. Profitable from day one, but the growth and aggression is not as good as compared to scenario 1. So what model you suggest? What model is working out in the market?
I think it's a mix of both. I think in a lot of these food tech delivery services, SaaS models, I think there's a lot of funding from VCs, structured funding that comes in. But it also becomes a valuation game, right? I mean, it's a top line model where you grow disproportionately. You go from 0 to 500 crores. And at that point, what could happen is another set of VCs would come in and they would sort of increase the valuation. So the ones who are already there, set up, would have a partial exit or a complete exit, and they would have made the money. So it's like a secondary stake sale.
Right.
Nothing wrong with it. That's a business model that works. The other model, which I have a lot of respect for, but I myself haven't been able to do it, was bootstrap from day one and not raise any funds, but create a business model that's predictable, the proof of concept is established, you are profitable, even if it's 2-3 EBITDA margins, 2-3%, but you are profitable. And at that point, try and raise monies if you need it.
Right.
So I think both models work. It really depends on a founder and what their preference is.
Sure.
But both exist in the market. I would say the bootstrap models are probably a lot lesser than the funding models, but I think VCs are also now getting very profitability focused. Unit economics has to be correct. It can't just be disproportionate top lines but losing more on the bottom line. So I think both models exist.
Right. So I'll come to the favorite part of the topic, Shukrit. So which I always wanted to learn from you, on the time management, on team building, on the delegation. I know you are a master there. So how do you manage your time? So you will be handling multiple tasks. I think let's split this question into two parts. When you started your company, you might be doing multiple things. You might be managing multiple items, multiple line items. So how do you manage your time to manage multiple things in the company at the initial part of the company? Now, after 10 years, where the company has seen the success and has grown to a significant stage, how do you manage your time in the current phase of Sayer Therapeutics?
Yeah. No, I think you know me. My life has always been calendar and agenda driven. Anything, put it on calendar, I will track it and I will make sure it happens. I often find people taking inordinate amount of time in meetings. A meeting that can be over in 5 minutes goes on for 30 minutes. Right. And I think time management is critical. When I started out with Sayer, for the first 2-3 years, we were in an office where, there was no mojo, there was no spirit. It was just a very dull, dark place, right? And the bathrooms would be broken, so you'd have to actually try and see what needs to be done to make the bathroom work, right? So you were involved from that to, on a daily basis, you are accruing customers. Yeah. So this customer, needs this, has these scientific expectations, we need to manage it, so on and so forth. So very tactical, operational. In addition to building the portfolio and driving the vision. So involved in everything. Then over a period of time, as you said, after 6-7 years, there are people who are now driving finance independently, daily operations, logistics, shipping, warehousing, distribution on their own. We have a diagnostics business, molecular diagnostics, so that is being managed end to end. And these are people who came in for one role and then grew into many other roles, and that's the point, right? If you want to retain high performers, you need to challenge them with growth opportunities. Right. Not just money, you need to challenge them with growth opportunities. And that's what we did. So today, what I find myself doing is focusing on legal, obviously, if there are any legal challenges or issues, regulatory approvals, launches, regulatory approvals, or working with the Indian health authorities. That is something I keep myself focused in. Business development, which is strategy, portfolio, because in licensing is our business model. Yeah. So need to focus on that. And from time to time, I'll look into who we hire, because we are a small team, so every hire matters. But when it comes to sales, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to commercial operations, logistics, distribution, and even finance, there are people in place who do it. So I've sort of taken a step back and I'm focusing on what I need to do. I need to look at other business opportunities, other growth opportunities in the company. So that's really where I'm trying to focus now. So went from everything to maybe 3 or 4 things now. Sure. And that helps me manage my time. But most importantly, what helps me manage my time is I don't have patience for long talks. If you are in a meeting, get to the point, get it done, move on, move to the next thing. If I have a whole day agenda, I typically find myself finishing things in 3-4 hours. Great. And I think that then helps me keep my time open for other things as and when they come. Right. So,
as you were saying about hiring, and you mentioned previously, the first 4 to 5 hirings are very critical. Yeah. For the growth of the company. So what's your process of validating a person? What qualities you see in a person to hire?
Yeah, so look, I don't think we've had success in the first 5. The first 5 May, today there are only 2 left.
Right.
Me and the, my CFO, head of administration, Rajesh, you know him. So we didn't have success there. So there's no fail safe. There's no saying this is the right process. But what experience has taught me by running a startup is what should we look for in the hire, right? You should not always hire for skills. You should hire for ambition,
Right.
mission fit, and ambition fit. Do they have the fire in the belly? Does it look like, for example, I'll give you an example.
Yep.
We were looking for a product manager. So a lot of good candidates came, sat there, asked a question, gave an answer, asked a second question, gave an answer. So nothing popped. Looked good, but nothing popped. Like, this is the person. Then we had this person come. She had a laptop open, and I saw when I walked in the room that there were 15 tabs open in the website, on the internet. I was wondering what's going on. Asked a question, jumped to a tab and said, this is my past experience, this is what I've done, this is the... And I think a lot of the questions were answered through the tabs, saying,
Right.
this is what I've done. Now, at the end of the interview, you feel warm and fuzzy because someone is eager and desperate for the job.
Right.
They come prepared, they are dressed right, because nowadays that is also a challenge. They want the job. So, to me, that mattered. It popped that, this person is in a desperate need of a job and wants to make it happen. So, that probably is one of the biggest things in terms of, hiring not just for skills. Sometimes you will need to hire for skills because it's a technical field, but hire for ambition, hire for attitude, and I think that matters a lot.
Understood. Yeah. And coming to the delegation is something, as you rightly said, I think you manage your time very well. I'm sure you might be delegating the work to the right person and you are getting the right output in a qualitative manner. So how do you make sure, Shukrit, because delegation is one of the very critical aspect where you wanted to focus on some of the key important strategic decisions and the team runs, as you said, sales, marketing, finance. How do you train them? How do you make sure the person does the job on time in a qualitative manner?
Yeah, I think one of the things you need to do is right up front, you need to identify the top 3 to 5 strategic objectives, whether it's revenue, whether it's regulatory approvals, or whether it's launches. You need to identify those. And then you need to repeat them enough number of times in the organization that these are the top 3 to 5. Now, 80% of your outcome comes from, focusing on 20% of these tasks.
Yeah,
which are
Pareto principle.
the Pareto's principle, which is what this is, these top 3 to 5 strategic objectives. So you identify it, you create a team that, can drive it. More importantly, before delegating, you publicly sort of prioritize delegation, you discuss that in meetings, you empower people. You tell them your KPI is not this project, your KPI is the outcome.
Right.
For example, launching a product tomorrow, product manager, I need 30% market share after year 1. That's an outcome.
Yeah.
That's not a project. So give them that, but also give them the confidence that if you fail, that's okay. There are lessons learned. A lesson learned is always good, whether it's good or bad. So do that, have their back, and practice the culture.
Right.
It's not something that's written on a cup of coffee or hung up on a wall, as usually we see in a lot of startups. It's actually what you practice, what you preach on a daily basis, how you acknowledge the work done, how you acknowledge, and you need to plan. You need to be able to give them time to prepare and do things. And in terms of delegation, I think it's also important that you identify the skills and energy of a person and you map that to the experience and the level.
Right.
So some jobs are only suitable for higher management, some are suitable for middle, some are for lower, and you sort of manage that. And you are able to delegate accordingly.
Correct. So as you said, if they fail, I see a lot of managers.
Yes.
The minute they fail, they shout at them.
Yes.
They insult in front of everyone.
Yes.
So how do you give the feedback, Shukrit, so that they will take it in an appropriate way, but also they will not take it in a light manner? Make sure the work is done on time.
It's a fine balance. I can't say I have perfected it. I haven't. I mean, there are times when I will fly off the handle when I'm in a team meeting as well, when I hear something which just seems so out of the charts, ordinary or pedestrian, that you think, what does this even mean? So that happens from time to time. But when they come up to you and they'll say, okay, this is what's going on, this is what has happened. You'll say, okay, so what's your lesson learned?
Yeah.
And they'll say, this is a lesson learned. I'm like, okay, will it be replicated? Will it be repeated? No, it won't be repeated. And then you track that. You see if a second time the same mistake is done, if a third time the same mistake is done, and you have that conversation. After 3 times, you need to put down the hatchet. But let them internalize it. Let them understand it, that this is the problem, this was the solution, but I did it some other way and I failed. You need to give them that space for the first few times. If you don't, then I think there is a lot of demoralization that sets in the system and the people as well. They need to know that their manager has their back.
So let's deviate a bit from corporate startup and let's come to some interesting questions, Shukrit. So what's the role of family in the as a support system in the business? Did they encourage you? I know you were in leadership positions, in big positions in some of the multinational companies in India. Did they encourage you to quit there and start the company? Or did they say, no, don't take the risk, don't jump from corporate to startup?
No, I think my wife was always very supportive. She, believed in me. She knew that wherever I go, whatever I do, I'll try and make a success of it. So when I discussed with her that there is an opportunity to lead and run a startup, found a startup, she was completely there. So now, running a startup is a very lonely job. It's very lonely at the top. Sometimes you get the right feedback from the team. Sometimes you get colored feedback and you have to sort of understand how to read between the lines and separate the wheat from the chaff, as they say. And it can get tiring. So when you go home, you have that conversation, and I'm very lucky to have a wife who is from a similar background, meaning healthcare and pharmaceuticals, but on the research side of things. So she understands the business. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's a decompression when I have a conversation with her and get her feedback on things. And there are a lot of things she's spot on, and I haven't thought about it, and I will say, okay, that makes a lot of sense, and then I'll sort of admit it. So yes, I mean, getting a support system where people understand what you are working on, what you are doing on a day in and day out basis, and being able to just be a sounding board, I think it matters a lot.
Right.
So that would matter from a family standpoint. Lost my parents early, so really don't have that, but my dad would have been a great asset if he was around. But yeah, I think with the wife, there's a lot that I'm grateful for.
Sure. I always wanted to ask this question, Shukrit. So when you go back, I think most of the coaches say this. They say that when you are at work, focus on the work. When you go back to the family, don't discuss about the work.
Yes.
But I also do it otherwise, because as I agree with you, so family has to be like a, they have to be a feedback mechanism, because they give the unverified kind of a feedback.
Exactly.
So do you think you have to focus only on the work when you are at work and should not discuss about work once you reach home, or you think otherwise?
I think in theory all that sounds great, right? Switch off, have a good work-life balance. Now they are saying that AI will make jobs redundant and you'll only work 2 days a week. So my question is, why even work 2 days a week? Then don't work. But the point is, you can't compartmentalize yourself based on theories.
Yeah.
Life keeps happening, things keep happening, and you need to have those discussions. And we are social beings, we are social animals. So, ultimately in a startup, you have to do what it takes. It can't be like how it is in a corporate where you are a huge functional leader and maybe you have the luxury of switching off. But in a startup, you can't. You're constantly in a working mode, learning mode, problem solving mode.
Yeah.
And for that, you can use all the help you can get. So I feel do what works best for you. If you think you have a startup with a 30% EBITDA and you have checked out at 6 p.m. and you don't do anything else other than fly fishing, then more power to you. But for me, it's always something that keeps playing in my head. Is it healthy? It's not healthy. Time will tell. But this is what works for me, and that's how I really, run the company.
I still remember, Shukrit, something stuck in my head when I was working in Biocon. In one of the meetings you mentioned, why can't work be a hobby?
Correct.
That is something stuck in my head very strongly.
Correct.
And I strongly agree on that point. Do you want to elaborate on that point? Because most of the people think otherwise. They say work shouldn't be a hobby. Sports, reading books should be a hobby. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think an extension to that is if work is your hobby, then you haven't worked a single day in your life, because you enjoy what you're doing and that's what it is. But if you genuinely love firing open the laptop or your phone and you are responding to issues and you are enjoying it, then at certain level the lines blur between a hobby and work.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy it, then more power to you. I mean, musicians, right? I mean, these are artists, these are creators, and they have never worked a single day in their life because all they are doing is making good music and going to performances, live shows, and doing their craft. And more power to them. I don't have that gift. I don't have a single extraordinary gift. It's all about just trying to make an honest day's living.
Right.
So if work is your hobby, meaning it doesn't really have to be a hobby, but it is something that you look forward to. It's not something where someone's pushing you out of bed, making you brush your teeth and go and then you're dragging yourself at work. If you genuinely want to address an issue heads on and you want to solve a problem and feel gratified at the end of the day, then the work will be a hobby.
Right.
It is all about the mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. On a lighter note, if you could have a superpower that will help you in your career, in the growth of the company, what could that be, Shukrit?
Superpower, huh?
Yeah.
That will help with the growth of the company. Yeah, from a career standpoint, right? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think we've burnt our hands one too many a time by hiring the wrong cultural fit.
Right.
And no matter what HR and experts say, that here is a Myers-Briggs tool or here is a scanning tool to ensure that this candidate is going to be value add, I just don't think there is a way to predict it.
Yeah,
unless they come in and you observe them for a few months and they observe you for a few months, there is just no way to predict it. And you are familiar with the adage, hire slowly, but if there is a rotten apple, then you take that decision fast to move away from that hire.
Yeah.
Because in smaller organizations, in startups, culture matters, your behavior matters, and if you let toxicity persist for a long period of time, it will end up harming the organization.
Yeah.
So I guess from a work standpoint, my superpower would be to X-ray vision someone 3 months down the line to see whether that person has been a cultural fit in the company. I mean, from a non-work standpoint, it could be a plethora of things, but from a work standpoint, I think,
what could be that non-working standpoint?
Just have enough money as Adani's, Ambani's and not worry about a thing, I guess. I don't know. Maybe just make a wish and, money will fly. No, I don't know. I think it quite honestly, it could be that, I'm a rock musician or something. I've always enjoyed rock music, alternative music. I've loved artists like Kurt Cobain and Pearl Jam with Eddie Vedder. So maybe sometimes I think I'm on a stage singing, but the best I can do is donkey braying. So that wouldn't work.
Yeah. So coming to the other part of the interview, Shukrit, stress.
Yeah.
Stress is something that's a synonym in startup.
Yeah.
So how do you manage stress and anxiety? If someone, from employee standpoint, vendors, customer standpoint,
Right.
how do you manage stress while building the companies?
I mean, it was a learning process. When I was in a corporate, big pharma, I would have a list of 10 to-dos. And a good day would be getting rid of 9 and then starting the next day with the one that's left and then add a few more. So you were in control, right?
Yeah.
You come to a startup, you have 10 to-dos, you probably get rid of one thing or two things, there's 8 remaining, and then there's another 10 that drop in.
Yeah.
So you think that you're playing catch up, but you're really not able to control it because there are things you can't control.
Yeah.
So making that mental adjustment, saying, there are some things where you can't push it. You just let the universe revolve on its own, and some things to solve on its own, and some things, you push. I think that mental adjustment is important, that not everything can be solved every day. You probably will do a few things, you will get up, dust off, and come to the next day. I have lately started, doing some breathing exercises and some level of stretching exercises and maybe a little bit of yoga, but that is also very inconsistent. But it does help,
Right.
slow the mind down a little bit. More importantly, the way I manage stress is, I binge watch OTT, so I keep my brain aside and sort of disconnect from the work thing. You still can't disconnect. It's always in the stream of consciousness. But you try and do that, and you watch and you enjoy and you immerse yourself into the thing. And then, go in for massages when needed. I used to jog, can't do that anymore with a bad knee after COVID. So I guess the answer is do what works for you.
Yeah.
To de-stress.
Right.
For me, these things work.
Right.
For someone else, it could be finding a counselor who will guide you through how do I address a stressful situation. For someone else, it could be hiring a very senior HR team or someone else who can advise them. But I've been able to manage it by doing these things. But make that mental adjustment that in a startup, you're not going to be able to control everything. You will need to just keep the ball rolling and grow from there.
You said watching OTT to get out of the stress sometimes. Is it important to defocus sometimes or give a break from the work, and
Yes.
which will help in refocusing on the work? Is it important, Shukrit?
I think it is. I think the ones who can switch off, I really admire them, because I think, even getting a weekend off, like a Saturday, Sunday, typically what ends up happening is your Friday rolls into Saturday and you still find yourself working half a day on a Saturday.
Right.
But then by evening, when everything is done, that Sunday is wide open and clear. And that is actually when you refresh.
Yep.
So that's why if you just have one day, it doesn't do anything for you.
Yep.
So the ones who can switch off, and switching off can't just be by watching OTT. It could be by reading a good book.
Yep.
Or it could be by going to a good place and having a nice meal, or it could be taking a trip. If you can do that, I think it just mentally does invigorate you. Unfortunately for someone like me, wherever I go, there will be some level of work carried with me, but I still make sure that the family gets the time that they need to get. I need to get the time to heal and adjust as much as I can do. And I think it's been working okay, but to each his own. Everyone has a different formula to it. But I agree, if you can switch off, that's the best thing you can do.
Sure. I strongly believe there will be challenges and problems which will tap your door on a daily basis in a startup.
Yes.
But what I strongly believe is, Shukrit, the type of problems will evolve over a period of time. The problem that you see at the beginning of startup may not be the problem that you see after 5 to 6 years.
Right.
So what are some of the challenges and problems that you have seen in your company at the beginning, at 5 to 6 years of growth and now?
Yeah. I think like I said, we didn't identify a very good place to come into work in the first 1 or 2 years. Like I said, we went in, but it just felt very dull and dark and not very inspiring. So then we moved to another location. We decided to put some money into it, got a fresh vibe where people actually feel like they want to come and work, and it feels a very collaborative and a fresh environment. So that was at the beginning. The other thing in the beginning was, in terms of challenges, was hiring the right people.
Right.
India is a very high context society. What I mean by that is people will follow people. Everyone will idolize someone, and they will, and it's always about following someone. So when I came here, a lot of people that followed me into this company were from my old company, right? And that's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is because they know how I work, they know my style, they know my culture, so probably that's why they are here. The bad thing is you are getting the same sentiments, same approach, same thought process. No one's bringing a fresh perspective. Yeah. So it's like groupthink.
Right.
And groupthink is basically being in an echo chamber.
Yep.
You just feel that everything we are saying and doing is good. So that was a challenge early on, not to be able to attract the right people. Now, over a period of years, we've been able to attract a lot more people from different varied backgrounds, and I think that has definitely helped us, both in head office and in the field. One of the things early on is, making the mistake as you're sitting on a boatload of cash, you sort of forget the financial fundamentals.
Right.
You staff up more than the business, and then what ends up happening is you end up losing a lot of money upfront.
Right.
And we saw that in the first 4 or 5 years, and still we couldn't address it. And this is despite us running big organizations with very large P&Ls. And still we let it roll. And then COVID came in, we understood how to pull back, how to ensure that capital is only released when there is an ROI commitment. And now we've turned around. So, we are sort of financially sound in terms of how do we balance the expenses and how do we balance the inflows. So cash flow is king. So these were challenges early on, but now that issue doesn't exist as much.
Right.
And I think we've been able to address it. I think one of the other things was also partners, principals, business partners. When they saw that you are a startup and you have 1 or 2 products or 1 or 2 alliances, their approach to you was, okay, we don't know where we are headed, is Sayer the right company? But now, after a track record of a few years, they can see that, okay, and then they would also talk to these partners that we already have. So it's good word of mouth. So you are able to get a lot more alliances going also. So over a period of time that happens, the cash flow stabilizes, a right set of people start coming in. If you can offer them the right packages in terms, not just in terms of money and equity, but in terms of growth and aspiration. I think making that shift from a dark place to a good office space did make a difference. And I think from a partnership and a regulatory standpoint, we used to struggle trying to get products approved. And then, we understood how to work within the system, how to ensure that, our packages are well drafted when we submit it. So that process is also slightly more predictable. Right. It can never be mastered, but it is more predictable.
Yeah. I think let's come to the last part of the session, Shukrit. I think in terms of advice, I think 2-pronged question. Someone fresh from college wanted to start entrepreneurial journey. What advice would you like to give them? 2, if someone wanted to switch from corporate to starting something, what advice would you like to give them?
Yeah, let's probably again start with the corporate ones. And I think we spoke about this, but let go of the safety net. If you have big pay packages, if you're coming in to work on a purpose and a mission, you need to probably take a step down, look at the equity component of it, the stock options component, and see if you really believe in the mission, then it will pay off in multiples in the future. So that could be a good thing. Don't get stuck on titles, designations.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that don't expect that a structure is in place in terms of SOPs and models. I found some candidates coming in and then saying, for travel, what's my allowance for this, that, or the other, which is a given, right? But in a startup, you are building it as you go. So if you're coming in from a corporate, you build as you go. And don't come in with a request for $100,000 for a project X, because resources are limited. So what's the ROI? What's the roadmap? What's the story there? Most importantly, unpack, unlearn, and be willing to learn new things. Manage the stakeholder system. Don't just say, okay, in my past life I've done this, so now I'll continue to do this. No, in a startup you need to be able to do many different things.
Right.
At all points in time. So I think that matters. And on days when things get rough and you really feel like, what the hell am I doing here in a startup as a big corporate guy, focus on the mission, the purpose, the why you are here, and maybe that will calm you down. So that's from a corporate standpoint. Then your question was for freshers. Freshers, I think they need to, I think one of the things with freshers is, they go home tired and they think that they've achieved a lot, but you need to separate the activities from the outcomes. Okay, I've done 10 things and I'm tired, but what have I achieved? What's the bottom line? What's the outcome of it? But more importantly, focus on a real problem, validate it with customers. Don't fall in love with it and say, I'll do this. Validate it with customers. Focus on financial fundamentals. It's very important. Focus on the first few hires. Get a team, and don't just get a team that will work with you. Get a team that actually knows more than you, because you can't be. It's a very challenging job being a founder. You need to have people who know more than you, so you can learn from them as well. And that's the sum total of parts, right? I mean, you staff with people who are more expert and proficient than you, and then that sort of builds the company. But yeah, financial fundamentals as well. Just keep on top of it. So those are some things, and most importantly also, I think speed and accountability. Make sure that a good job is done and you have rapid turnover and throughput, as opposed to trying to make a perfect pitch every time. That doesn't work, because there are 1,000 things on your plate, and you need to be able to turn it around. So those are some things.
Great. So thank you so much, Shukrit. I think thanks for your valuable time. I think in the era of startups and companies which are failing in 3 to 4 years, you have built a successful company which stayed for 10 years, and I'm sure it will see a significant growth in the coming years. We have learned a lot of lessons in terms of building teams, how to manage, how to delegate, how to get funds, how to run a successful company. And thank you so much for your valuable feedback and time.
No, my pleasure. This has been a delight. It's been a very insightful conversation. In fact, as I've been talking to you, I've been able to pick up on things that are latent in the brain, and sort of things that we've done, and being able to articulate it has been fun. And I think Sayer Therapeutics is a work in progress. Yes, we've completed 10 years, but as you said, there's a long way to go. There are many things to unpack, many other things to do, but I think that's what gives us the pleasure. We've sort of pivoted from not just doing generics, but moving to a very focused identity in terms of novels, proprietary medicines, where the scientific engagement with the doctors are high, and it requires a lot of gestation period, as opposed to the quick big bang generic strategy. So we've sort of pivoted to niche orphan medicines, and I think there's a lot of patients who get benefit from it. There's a lot of doctors who appreciate what we do, and I think that is the secret sauce to keeping the company, going at full speed. And let's hope for the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you,
inviting
Shukrit.
me.
And nice talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you.